Hello and welcome to this conversation with Jessica Medina. Jessica Medina is a former big law attorney. She went from big law to the SEC. She spent some time there before she was like, you know what? I think I actually just don't want to be a lawyer. And she became an accredited financial counselor, and she helps lawyers and other professionals who want to make a change in their life, who want to know that they have the financial resources to really follow their heart's desires and really arrange their lives for their lives and fit work into their lives and not squeezing a tiny slice of life into work.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, Elena. I love that you got my official title correct. You have no idea how many people get this wrong.
I've had to look it up many times, so
I
it
know.
finally sunk in.
Coming from the SEC and then turning into an accredited financial counselor, there's a lot of confusion of what I help people with, but I know we'll get into that. But I just want to say I was very heartened that you got everything about my bio correct. Thank you.
Without really, I'm not looking at anything, which, no shame. So, and Jessica has been a really good friend of Will, and she reached out to me a few years ago and was like, hey, we're kind of doing side-by-side kind of things. Like, you're helping them figure out the what they want. I help them figure out the how with the money. And we've done some webinars together. We led a retreat together in Arizona in 2023, which was amazing. And Jessica, I'm so happy to have you back in the Will room to talk about both your experience in your journey out of big law. And you had some very unique and challenging circumstances of being a lawyer, a single mom of twins in law school, and then how you've made your whole career pivot. I would love to hear some of these. You've worked with, I would say at least that I can think of sort of off the top of my head, at least 10 Will members. Really, so what are the lessons learned for, really the women lawyers who are leveraging the resources inside of Will, and how are you helping them?
I love it. So that'll be the whole hour, right? That's how we're going to
That's it. That's our agenda.
I'll just start talking from now. And
I will ask you some probing questions along the way, and we will definitely have time for the people who show up live get to ask you questions live. Let's dive in. So tell us a little bit about your legal journey.
You heard a little bit about, kind of my path into the law and then out of the law. Just to put a finer point on things, like many people, I wanted to go to law school since I was in high school. This is what I thought my dream career would be. I was very excited to show up on the Columbia campus when I did in the fall of 2001. And my law school journey took quite a turn. I became a single mom to twins during the middle of my 2L finals. I had planned on maybe going into the government. I had a public service heart that I really wanted to be giving back to my community. And then I graduated with $200,000 of student loan debt. So at that point in time, it was very complicated for me to figure out how to raise a family on my own and pay off this student loan debt and live, the life of an attorney. And so I went straight into big law. I worked at a firm in DC for many more years than I ever imagined that I would. And I think, a lot of Will members will understand the pull of, the prestigious lawyer career. Many of us sacrifice a lot of hours and effort and blood and sweat and tears to get to points in our career. And it can be very difficult to consider walking away from that path, even if all of the signs are pointing that is not the path for you, that is not the path to happiness, to fulfillment, to joy. The money was a really big aspect for me, especially as a single mom. But I did leave my firm and go into the government finally. I went to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I took a 50% pay cut. I wasn't very good at managing my money at that point in my life, so that was painful for me and my children. They will tell you they do not have fond memories of no heat November and eat through the pantry December as we were trying to figure out our life, this new government salary.
Wow. I don't think I remembered that, a 50% pay cut.
It was pretty drastic. We were still living in DC. And so my lifestyle didn't necessarily take a 50% drop in the expenses, but the income side certainly changed. And it really made me focus on money management skills and then going over to the government. And for all intents and purposes, this was my dream job. I was working at a regulatory agency. I was in enforcement. So I was, walking around with the white hat trying to protect investors and get all the bad guys. And I hated it. I didn't, which was a really horrible wake-up call for me to have. I thought that it was the firm I thought everything about what I didn't love about my career and about what I was doing with my time and how I was spending my life was wrapped up in where I was working. And moving to the government and having every single thing that I had always ever wanted in a career in front of my face and on a platter in front of me made it very clear that it was actually the career itself that was the problem. And that was probably one of the hardest wake up calls for me, because that meant that I would have to make much bigger changes if I really wanted to shift how I felt in my day to day life and what I was spending my life doing. I would look around at my colleagues and they just loved it. They were so excited, and, to bring people in for testimony and, preparing the exhibits and getting the action memos ready for the commission. And I was just like, hey, is there some sort of like cross collaborative project that I could work on? I don't think I'm as adversarial as I need to be for this job to feel good. And so when I realized that I wanted the feeling that I saw my colleagues have every day, enjoying their work and enjoying their home life, I knew that I had to make a change. And it was terrifying to think of what else I could possibly do. And it took me some time to figure it out. I just knew that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, certainly not in the way that I had been practicing. I didn't see a lot of options within the law that would work for me. I certainly didn't know anyone like Elena who would help me actually ask
I know.
myself those questions.
I know. I wish I had $1 for every time someone said, I wish I knew you when. I wish I'd found you when I was trying to make my change.
I bet.
Yeah,
I hear that
yeah.
now too, right?
I
Given
bet.
given my
Yeah.
line of work.
Yeah.
But so it was a hard path for me to figure out where I wanted to land. I did eventually get my money ducks in a row. That was necessary for me to feel safe and secure to leave a legal career. And once I had some of that in place, I ended up meeting my husband. My children were a bit older, and there were just all of these stars aligning to allow me to make the jump. And I did. And now I'm an accredited financial counselor, which we sit in a funny place in the financial professional spectrum. I don't help people with investments. I don't sell financial products. It's actually lovely. I just help them with all of the money management stuff that I wasn't familiar with when I started out as a professional. So helping people with cash flow management, the money coming in, the money going out, paying down debt, finding money to save for long-term goals, and specifically helping people plan for transitions. That's my sweet spot in the financial industry. It's also my sweet spot in the lawyer transition space. I work with attorneys from all different walks of life that are looking for all different walks of life, but they're definitely looking to make a change. And I love helping them think through that and feel more confident and secure in that transition so they can pursue all those dreams that they are able to find once they have a conversation with Elena.
Yeah, but I mean, I think your work also helps them start to like see that their dreams are possible, right? I mean, you do help them also kind of get like, what would you love? You do some of that in your
Oh,
work with
absolutely.
them
Right.
too.
Not all of
Yeah.
my clients come from Will.
Yeah.
So some of them haven't, had the chance to do a lot of the deeper work that my Will clients have already done. But I think, especially for a lot of my more risk averse clients, they can't even access the part of their brain that
Yeah.
allows for dreaming
Yeah.
and allows for, something different than the traditional safe path
Yes.
until they get an answer on the money. It
Yeah.
just creates this insurmountable hurdle, and it shuts down their analytical thinking, and they're just in fear mode the entire time, and they can't even process thinking of something else. Once they see some potential pathways, even if it isn't a direct pathway to a new career, if I just give them some options of how maybe they don't have to keep doing what they're doing,
Yes.
if they make some adjustments, or even if they don't, even if they just need to be validated that yes, you can leave and no one will be destitute, that comfort then opens up the gates for them to be able to tap into that creativity, to be able to tap into the passionate side that they've been denying themselves for so long. And so I do believe that the work that I do, it comes up at different parts in the process.
Yes.
It's always helpful.
But I think in some ways that paves the way. Some people have come into Will from Jessica also having that. I have heard so many times from so many people, like, this has helped me dream again. So I think there's the financial piece that keeps people from dreaming. They're just like, I just don't know how, because I've only been on this one kind of lockstep path. And so I don't know how to allow myself to dream. I don't know what other options really are out there for me. And of course, that's what we do and will with them. So together we help people see that their dreams are possible. Then with working with you, they get that real grounding of the money and that safety. That's really beautiful. I hadn't thought about it like that before. What else do you want to share? Do you want to go into some of the things? I mean, I think we're starting to already veer into the territory of like what you've learned from your work with will members?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do appreciate about my will members, like I said, is that they have often done at least some of the initial dreaming. Because as, a planner by heart, I also can think of a million different scenarios in which ways could potentially play out. But if I have a guiding light for what we are aiming for, my work becomes much more focused and we can be much more strategic in terms of how we're actually mapping out the pathway to where they want to get to. Of course, I do this work with my own clients, but I love that many of my will members will have at least some idea of maybe a direction that they might want to run toward, whether that be they just want to practice in a completely different way. Maybe they want to leave a firm and, go in-house or work at a foundation or, work part-time, right? Be able to take some sort of a break to create space in their life for something else. Or they know they don't want to be a lawyer at all. And that might be a different road in terms of potential income generation, at least off the bat. So we're always taking those kinds of things into account when we are thinking of there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of levers that we could potentially pull. And I'm going to be looking at my client's current state of affairs, what their future state of affairs might require in order to maintain their lifestyle or at least maintain the level of comfort, that they want to have for their life. But then also what is the future income generation that's going to be needed in order to create that life that they want, in the future, and how quickly are they going to need it? I think that's often what can prevent people from, taking a leap. We have this idea that, well, I have to make exactly what I'm making now, and I have to make it immediately right after I leave my job. Otherwise, everything is going to fall to pieces. If you can see that this can be somewhat of a phased approach, rebuilding yourself as a professional, potentially in another arena, and that might take some time. How do we prepare for that? It's not unpreparable, right? There are steps that we can take. And I think thinking through what those steps are, what they might look like, whether people already have the resources and they just don't know it and they don't understand how to deploy them in a strategic way, that can be very helpful. But what I have found now that I've been doing this work for nearly 5 years, I've worked with, hundreds of attorneys at this point. I now have seen so many transition paths. I love thinking about my own network, just of my clients, of people that I've helped, and thinking about all of the different people that not only have I created a specific roadmap for that type of a transition, but I also know people who have gone through that type of a transition. So it's been very fun for me to talk to lawyers who are at the beginning of their transition planning and be able to say, hey, oh, you're interested in becoming a clinical professor? I have 2 clinical professor clients. Would you like to talk to them?
So you can help them with that informational interviewing phase in will, right? So one of the phases is once you become clear on what you want, then going out and kicking the tires on it, making sure you want to do that before you want to go down a path towards more grad school. I love that you've seen so many paths and you can help with that. Can you share an example of like a will member, not naming them at all and sharing it in a way that protects their anonymity, but like a story of someone you helped in will and how their will journey, like, how that supplemented your work or kind of boosted or aided your work with them?
So I know of at least one will member that was not particularly interested in continuing in the practice of law. She had some very woo type interests and was really interested in creating her own business and really very making a strong pivot away from law and into some of the more spiritual arts. And she had done a really good job up to that point in her life in terms of creating financial circumstances that didn't have a lot of, outstanding obligations and burdens. She had done a lot of work on the forefront, but I think she just wasn't sure. She needed to see the pathway to becoming a new business owner. She needed to make sure that, her kid would be okay. She needed to make sure that she would be okay. And she just didn't want to feel like she was making an irresponsible decision.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of, right, whether you're a will member or not, most attorneys, their greatest fear is that they're, going to make an irresponsible decision, right? They're going to waste time, they're going to waste money. And having a pathway laid out where you have that in your back pocket can be such a nice comfort blanket for my folks who are about to do a transition. So we had been working together and I had warned her that when she gives her notice, she was working in-house at the time, her company may be interested in keeping her her on in some form or fashion and to prepare for that conversation. I think a lot of us believe that we're going to give notice and we're going to get kicked out, right? Where they're going to,
Totally. I
lock
say
up
the
the
same
door.
thing. I say the same thing so often. I'm like,
Right.
okay, so you're ready to give notice. Okay. It's like, I should probably create a little module in the course on that because it happens over like, okay, they're probably going to ask you to stay. They're probably going to offer you all the things that you dreamed of and, or they're going to ask you to go part-time and, or do consulting.
I was able to have that conversation
Good.
with her because a prior client of mine had gone through that exact same experience.
Yes.
And what had been interesting, she had been a partner, my prior client had been a partner in a firm. So it was a little bit different. And she had, clients that she had been working with for years. And when she left her partnership, she didn't go right back to work. She wanted to take a lot of time off. She wanted to coach her daughter's basketball team and go tour the national parks with her husband. And they just had a lot of really just fun, joyous things that had been put on the back burner for many
for
years.
sure.
But when I met with her a year after we had worked on her transition plan, she was doing consulting work for the very client that she had been serving when she was a partner at the firm, but now doing it on her terms when she wanted to work, charging the rate that she wanted to charge.
That's right.
And it was such a different experience for her, but she always had enjoyed the work. It wasn't something that she was dead set on leaving forever. She just didn't like the way that she had to perform that work in that system.
Because it's a completely different experience doing work you enjoy, not under the billable hour, not under the pressure of being a partner at a law firm, all the business development and generation pressure, all the things. So that's great.
Great to be able to have that conversation with my will member client because she absolutely got asked to stay on and she thought about it and we had planned for it. We had planned for what would some part-time additional work allow her through her transition, and also where were her boundary lines in terms of how much work is going to actually prevent her from being able to pursue these new interests that she has. When is the stress not going to be worth it anymore? And kind of just starting to think through, what is the cost benefit analysis of that gravy, additional part-time work?
I'm smiling because I'm getting that. Like, just to clarify, when a will member works with Jessica, it's not like Jessica and I are not working together with them. So I want to make this very and we actually have really clean boundaries about that. We're like, so I know so-and-so is working with Jessica. I don't ask her. We don't talk about them. It's just, we're both very clean about it. That said, I think there might be something reassuring for a will member who gets such similar messages from both of us independently.
Right.
I say the same thing to them over here, right? When you give notice, be prepared for all the things we just said. They're getting that from you too. So then it's like, sometimes it takes hearing something from more than one person for it to click and be like, oh, okay, well, if Elena's saying that and Jessica's saying that, I'm going to just start taking it seriously. Not that they don't listen to either of us. I think one of the things we both do with people is really challenge. They come in wanting their thinking to be expanded. Like they know they have to think things and see some things through some new lenses because the old lenses aren't working.
And first of all, I think that you need to hear the information from the right source at the right time. There's nothing that can replace perfect timing of getting a message or having it come from, a particular source. You might say something and I might say it slightly differently and it lands differently.
Totally. I mean, I've heard the same things millions of times from different coaches and teachers. Like it's not just, me too.
But I also think that what is really synergistic about how your program works and how my program works is I am often dealing with very practical, objective, mathematical analyses that we're doing and coupling that with the harder to quantify emotional boundary setting, right? Figuring out what is most important to you in terms of your values. We certainly do that work in my program, but I can see a difference with the people who do that work outside, right? That they don't just do it with me. And I think being able to analyze an issue from all of those different perspectives makes for a better decision. It makes for a decision that is much more aligned with someone's actual true values and where they want to be in their life. And I think that is really the benefit. They get both a down-to-earth, practical, let's crunch some numbers and see what the cost benefit would be from a numbers perspective. And they get a more, spiritual and, values centered assessment of
Yeah.
what's the cost benefit analysis for my spirit.
Right. I think they get, I just got this image, they get like the ground in the sky, right? You give them the grounding, and I'm like all about possibility and helping them expand their capacity to see what's possible for them. I think they get that well. That's so beautiful. So we want you to be grounded and see the sky's the limit.
That's always my goal for my clients. I do not have a dog in the fight of whether you want to stay at your firm, whether you want to
That's
stay
right.
in the law at all. I chose to leave, but I love lawyers. I love people who love practicing law, but I want you to be there because you want to be there. My goal is to make sure, like Susan said, that you never feel trapped where you are, that whatever you're doing is very purposeful and intentional and hopefully joyful at the same time. And what I have found in terms of working with my clients is that once we free them from that feeling of being financially trapped, they're able to make those intentional decisions. And whether they choose to stay or they choose to go, it's their choice. And
Yeah.
that's what feels so good. It's not because the money itself is great or they have something else that they're planning for. It's because they've made this intentional choice. And that is so much easier to do when you have the numbers in front of you, when you know what those choices mean and what the consequences are and why you would or would not choose something.
To reiterate what Jessica's saying also, and what Susan said, is that people come into will, and sometimes the right choice for them is to stay at their firm, is to stay at their job, is to see that that's the right choice. So I'm also agnostic, like you said, a dog in the fight of like, I want you to be happier. I want you to feel aligned. I want you to feel like you're living your life and it's not passing you by. Now, Lisa came to Will from Jessica. Would you be willing to share like your experience of having worked with both of us, how it's helped you and your journey and sort of where you were before working with us and where you are now?
I'm Lisa. I'm in Denver, and in 2020 over COVID, I was really struggling with my big law job and being a lawyer and wanting to do things and all the other things that were not lawyering. I don't usually engage very much on LinkedIn, but I'm also a very social, outgoing person. And so I just started being like, well, I'll just branch out and see who's out in the world. Enter Jessica. So Jessica had posted, I'd been following her for a few weeks, and one day she posted, is it just me, or are all of my big law friends wanting to leave law? Something to that effect. And that resonated with me. And I really wanted to talk to her more about how she did something different than law and like what that path was. So I reached out kind of behind the scenes, and we had a coffee, and I wasn't looking for a financial coach. I had horrible student loan debt that was really keeping me stuck where I was. I'm still here, by the way. I'm not stuck, but I'm here. I just decided I would work with her, and she pulled my husband in unexpectedly. That was great. We worked out a good plan that keeps working for me, and I paid off my student loan and did a bunch of other strategic money things that my life feels a little more free these days. And from that, clearing out the financial, what do I want to call it, weight of not being able to do anything different, I reached out to Elena and started working with Elena in 2021-ish.
No, I think it was 2022. So
Yeah.
just 2 years ago. Yeah.
And I wanted to do something different, and I was really burned out. And I don't think I realized I was burned out till I met Elena, and I learned I could take a leave of absence from my work for my mental health. And I did that, and I've been back at work for a year and a half. It's much better. All the things are much better. So that's my story.
And can we celebrate that like you've taken not one but two international trips in the last few months?
2 or 3 months.
In what way do you feel, if you do, that was possible based on some of the work you did with Jessica and I?
I mean, to be honest, before on the financial side, my student loan was a second mortgage. So that freed up that much extra so that we could save a whole lot. And also Jessica introduced me to the idea of a high interest savings account. Did I use the right terminology? Yes, I did. And so that introduced me to the idea of saving buckets. So I have lots of buckets, and travel is one of them. So dollars go into travel, and that happens. And then the second piece is working with Elena and Will, and just believing that I could continue and better create my own boundaries, but also honor my own boundaries and be okay, not like eliminating a lot of the guilt that I felt for doing all the things.
That's such a beautiful, if you're able to set the boundaries so that you can take a trip and not your laptop, right? And Susan, who got off the call, she took her first unplugged vacation in over 36 years.
So amazing for her.
Yeah, so amazing. And she's got more planned. Like once she saw she could do it and the company didn't explode and she didn't get fired and nobody died, like she is doing it again.
That was my win for today, Elena. I'm up in my happy place in Vail and working remotely. But this morning it was off to a quiet start and there's a nice trail up the road. Instead of feeling guilty sitting around going, I should be working, I was like, nobody's going to miss me. And I went on a walk for an hour and a half and came back and it was fine.
That's the victory, is like, I'm in Vail for a conference. Nobody's going to miss me for an hour and a half. I'm going to go for a hike. Like, oh my God, that's the win. That to me gives me full body chills.
I love Vail Lisa. Vail Lisa is one of my favorite Lisas. I love them all, but I really love Vail Lisa making
We love Vail
choices.
Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa is my favorite too. My husband told me yesterday that I need to stop living in the moment and look ahead because we'll eventually find a place we can afford.
Sounds like a transition.
Sounds like she's got a bucket for that.
Jessica, I'm really curious about your journey because I'm a financial regulator in DC, and what you described, your experiences resonated where it's like, I want to make a difference. I want to help. I'm not just ready to just give it all up, but how do I make a difference? How do I help? And Elena, this goes into my individuation strength and the Gallup.
You want to help people. Yeah. You want to help individuals too. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you come to this point for you? And that might be a really huge question.
It isn't, Christine, because I feel like I spent many years being unhappy and not having any idea what I could possibly do other than be a lawyer. And I will say it was a bit of, kind of serendipity in terms of how I ended up where I am right now. I love telling the story because I get to talk about my husband. So I met my husband when I was at the SEC because how else would I have time to meet another human being and actually be a, loving, giving, romantic partner? He was retiring from the Army. He's a 30-year Army veteran. And if you know anything about the U.S. military, they are very serious about their veteran ready programs. So he spent an entire year going to trainings and having to fill out all these requirements before they would let you exit the military. They want to make sure that the veterans are going to be, contributing members of society and they're not going to be a drag. And they've had the military running everything in the background for them for many years. And so one of the things that they needed to do was meet with an accredited financial counselor. Now, I worked at the SEC. I thought I knew what all the financial professionals were and all the letters after people's name. And I had never heard of this kind of a person. And when I looked more into what they did, they really do sit in the piece of the financial world that has nothing to do with securities. And so from that point, I was just like, oh, this sounds up my alley. I hate the securities world. These people are terrible. I mean, I'd just been dealing with like the underbelly, right? I was dealing with all the bad investment advisors, right? And all the broker dealers that are like churning all their customers' accounts. And so I thought, wait, are there people who just help people with like budgeting and paying off debt and managing money better? Is that a thing? Because I thought you have to teach yourself those skills and that's the only option available. And apparently it's not. This is an actual profession. We have a whole organization. And Christine, if you're anything like me, this organization has ethics guidelines. There's an exam. There's continuing education requirements. I was like, warm, fuzzy blanket of familiarity. Oh my goodness, this feels just like law.
I think Christine's head is exploding.
A lot of times the financial space, you talk about security space. I'm a CFA, but a lot of it is kind of helping rich people get richer. And what you're describing is more inspiring to me.
That's always, right? Going the CFP route, right? Going the investment advisor route is always an option, especially when you're moving from law. You get a leg up. You already have some of the requirements met with your degree, et cetera. Similar to you, when I thought about the types of problems I would be helping people solve in that strata of the financial world, I had no interest in helping people who have money grow more money. That was not interesting at all to me. I wanted to help people who did not know how to find the money to grow in the first place and had kind of felt left. It really is a hole in the industry, especially for professionals, because everyone assumes that we know how to manage money. And I didn't want to be the one to abuse them of that, belief, but it's true. There are so many professionals who never got that memo, right? In in
Yeah.
high school or from their family. Being able to fill that hole is really fun. And I love people who ask questions. I'm the same way. And so all of my clients, I answer questions, right? I ask questions, they answer questions, they ask questions. It's a lovely symbiotic relationship. But I think that's why it also works so well for me, because I'm helping people that I genuinely adore. I am friends with many of my clients. Susan and Lisa came on the call for a reason, I'm sure, because I hang out with them whenever I go see them. But being able to do that and being able to be the resource that maybe they don't feel comfortable going to anyone else about, to help them with a very sensitive area of their life. And when I get to work with couples, very special to me, because I'm hoping that I'm creating better conversations between people around things that often can be very tumultuous if not handled smoothly. I'd be happy to do an informational interview on the Accredited Financial Counseling Program or other spaces in the financial space.
Let's definitely make sure that you guys have each other's information to connect. I just want to be mindful of the time. Jessica can do a deeper dive with you, Christine, offline on that. I want you to be able to ask other questions, but going deeper into kind of that path, I think let's save that. Thank you. I also think there is a space for people who do what Jessica, accredited financial counselor and a CFA, a certified financial advisor. There's some Will members who said to me, oh, it's great, Jessica does this. I would love it if they actually could help me then with the investing. It's really about like what's going to light you up. And like Jessica's super clear, this is the only part I want to do. And that's beautiful. There's room for your own flavor in it, Christine, or anyone else.
I will say, and then I know we got to move on if anyone wants to talk. That spoke to me with Jessica when you talk about the adversarial side of what we work on in regulatory. I get it, because I get angry at like fraud, waste, and abuse, but it's just some people love it, and it just doesn't light me up as much. Thank you for that.
Sometimes it's a blessing to be put where you believe that you should be happy and to not experience the happiness that you were expecting. It's very good information for you to know that maybe there's something else that you need to look for. This is what I love about the will community and about the network that I've built now, working with attorneys for so many years. There are so many paths available. They're just not advertised.
Yeah,
right? It takes a little bit more work to figure out what could an alternative path look like. And if I can help someone see the money way through, right, how to get themselves a little bit of comfort and security on the way to the next thing that they're doing, then that's work. That's a day well spent in my book. It's not like when we were in law school, right? And you have the roadmap is literally written on the wall. Listen, you're all going to big law if we can get you over there, as many as possible. These are your 3 years, and then you're going to go work there, preferably make a partner, even though the numbers don't support that.
That is part of the problem. And Christine, you're so early in your will journey. This is an awesome idea. I'm so glad to see you lit up. And that's information for me as your coach. You're going through a process of, like Jessica said, like really, what are those strengths? Okay, so you see the individualization. This is how you could help. And then really we're going to keep pulling those things together. So this is going to be one of your options, and you're going to have others too.
The money part is so people don't talk about it. I love that we're addressing it. It's real.
It's so real. It's so real. And I like to think of it like, I wrote this down while we were talking, like, I think in will, you learn what else you can do, what else you can do and would love to do. And I see heads nodding. And Jessica's like, how you can afford it.
That's always part of it. And one of the things I wanted to mention, because Lisa reminded me about my brilliant cash management system that I teach all my clients. A lot of times for many of the people who come to me, they have potentially been in positions where they haven't necessarily had to think very much about money. And that's nice. That's really comfortable. There's a very large margin of error, right? If you are making a salary that covers all of your basic expenses and whatever random things you might want to do over the course of the day or trips that you might want to take, etc. And I think for a lot of people, what I hear, especially when I'm, talking to a new client, they are terrified of the potential that they will not be able to keep a handle if the surplus goes away, right? If they're not swimming around in a lot of extra money so they can make all of these bad decisions, in terms of where their money is going, things that aren't just aligned with what they really want to be doing. Without that margin of error, they're going to be in real trouble. And they are terrified of how hard it's going to be. They're terrified of what they're going to have to say no to, because it's this amorphous difference that they can't really wrap their arms around. How different does your life actually need to be in order to make some changes? I often find myself in the lovely position of being able to tell people, you're not not really going to have to change very much at all. But I would like you to be more intentional
Yeah.
and more mindful of what's going on. And I'm
Yeah.
going to teach you systems so that you can be more mindful, so that you can manage your money in a way that gives you your thumb on the pulse of what's going on, acknowledges your hot zones, but limits what you have to pay attention to. So you're not tracking every dollar after you've tracked every hour. That is like cruel and unusual punishment for my people. And I think that once you have built those muscles, you have so much more confidence in yourself that you're going to be able to handle any income shifts that might come in the future.
I
When
love
you
that.
haven't built
I love that.
in to
Yeah.
start, it's very difficult to think about what life is going to feel like on the other side. But if you can trust yourself that you know how to manage your money, then you can manage your money at any level. And that's very, very empowering. And it gives you some of that motivation to be able to maybe take a little bit more of a risk than you would otherwise, because you know you got it. You know you can handle
That's so great. You said so much in there. I mean, one of the things I heard you say is like when people come into Will, I see them, they have more than enough money and they don't have the bandwidth to learn how to manage it. And they just know that they have enough. So when you said like bad money decisions, can we change that language to just, like you said, unintentional or unconscious or like
Out of alignment.
unmindful, out of alignment, but they don't even know it. They just know they have enough and they've got so much to deal with over here that they don't have the bandwidth to like. And so what I love is like, that was so beautiful how they really built this muscle to handle it, whether it's more or less, or less or more.
I just wanted to add, like, the freedom that comes with dealing with that piece, at least for me first, really opened up the possibilities of being more curious about what else can I do if not law, or even if law. Like, it just freed all of that, because that was really oppressive to think, I can't do anything. I need to make the salary. I need to do this. I can't afford this. And now that those things have kind of been laid out, that's not really a concern anymore. I could be like, oh, I'll think about that. Maybe not.
Let's see, Catherine, do you have any questions for Jessica?
So much of what you've said has really resonated with me. And, you know, what you said about people who, or lawyers who are often really risk averse and like don't even know how to dream. I feel like that's the space I'm in right now. I don't know what direction I want to go. So I can see how this would be super helpful once I have like a little bit more direction.
Beautiful. And that's what you're doing here in Will, Catherine. So kudos to you for, you know, being on the path to figuring it out. Yeah, we got to celebrate what we are doing. And I'm saying this as much for you as I am for me, as I am for you. Let's remember to celebrate each step. All right, I want to start to wrap it up. Jessica, so good. Of course, always learn new things. I saw new ways, you know, new synergies of how we're here helping people, women who want to leave or love the law. What are the best ways people can find you? And of course, we'll make that all available for everyone.
Well, as you heard, I am prolific on LinkedIn. So you can come and find me there. I post, I'm available in the DMs over there. But if you're looking for personal finance content, find me at Jessica Medina on LinkedIn. And you can also find my website at www.jessicamedinallc.com. There's lots of resources on there. You can check out the blog of when my husband and I were traveling the US in our RV for 18 months. That was a fun adventure. And now we are stationary here in Asheville, North Carolina, as we build our vineyard. So I'm trying to convince him to start a blog so that we can have a record of that. But I feel like I might have to do it. So, you know, we'll hear more about that. But also, as we mentioned earlier, I do host lawyer events in cities wherever I travel. So please feel free to hop on the dinner invite list. You can find that on my website. And like we said, if you're going to be in Atlanta in early August, I'll be popping up there. And I would love to see some of you if you're local.
And Jessica comes through New York, DC, and lots of places. So she was just here recently and we got a chance to hang out and get some froyo together. All right. So Jessica, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who got on the call. Thank you those of you who've shared your experience of working with both of us. If you've got more questions for Jessica or me, check out the links and find us, because we are here to help you know what else you can do and how you can afford it.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Thank you for the invite.